Hi friends, it's Derek here, host Second with Fancy People, and I would like to respond to a comment about the NE subtype. No, I'm sorry. About, oh yeah, INFJ NE subtype? Perhaps, are subtypes real? Perhaps a video on an INFP who scores 55% FI versus TI? Does it really materialize? Jay, that's, I respond to a lot of really good, interesting comments, ask interesting questions, or make interesting observations, or whatever. That's probably the single best question that's been asked in a comment in a long time. It's a pretty straightforward question. Are subtypes really a thing? Okay, well, first of all, the INFJ NE subtype. Okay, I was gonna say my initial response to that was, well, they don't even have an E in the conscious stack. Why would they have a subtype in any subtype? And then I started thinking about Ken. Ken expresses a very NE quality about him, and it's definitely an INFJ. But that just drives home the point to me that probably subtypes don't work. I mean, I almost want to start this video over because I'm so in the process still of thinking this shit out because of the question that was asked and the way it was framed. If he had said an NI subtype of an INFJ, which he might have meant, then I would have not been prompted to go down this whole chain of thinking that I'm stuck in right now. That's preventing me from making a good video almost because I'm trying to think it out at the same time that I'm talking to you. Which I normally do, but not quite this deep at the beginning of the thought process. I just started thinking about this when I've read the comment right now. I've read it before, but I hadn't noted the NE part. I mean, I just realized as I was making the video that, oh, he said NE, not NI. I think I just sort of read it as NI because, I don't know. Anyway, let's go over some existing subtype models. Let's start with that. There's the DCHN? No, yeah. Harmonizing, normalizing. Yeah, DCHN model. Yeah. And there's two interpretations of that. The one that's the actual DCHN model that says dominant subtypes express a preference for TE and FE. Creative subtypes express a preference for, I don't remember what they say for that, but it's fucking stupid and wrong anyway because it says that this is the case regardless of slot placement. But how a given function expresses has everything to do with slot placement. And so it's not possible for, say, your polar to be stronger than normal and for you to therefore be, it's like if you're polar FE, but your FE is very strong for a polar FE person, you still won't express as dominant dominant socially via your FE. Okay, so that's why that makes no sense. It would make it impossible for certain types to ever be dominant subtypes, and for certain types that it just doesn't make any sense. What does make sense, however, is that the dominant, creative, harmonizing, normalizing subtypes refer to which of your four conscious functions seems to be more central or present to your expression of self than others within your type. So, for example, if you were to take 100 ENTPs and somehow be able to successfully measure each function with the number, like out of a total of 100, you have to distribute 100 points amongst your four conscious functions. Now, some people are going to be more balanced, some people are going to be more imbalance. You'd get a average number for SI, it would be low, it'd be like 10 or something, or maybe even lower than that, I don't know. But if you were extreme version, you might have a 1 in SI. You know, maybe the number for NE is going to be high for everybody, right? Let's say 60 or something. And then, like, you know, well, let's say, like, you know, 50, 30, 50, 30, 15, 5, like that. Let's say those are the averages. That gets to 100. Well, then somebody might be 60, 20, 15, 5, and then they'd be an NE subtype. Somebody might be 50, 40, 6 and 1 or something, whatever the math is. You get the idea. And then that would indicate which subtype they're. Except there's a problem with that idea. Now, that's my version of the DCHN idea. Because it does seem to be that, for example, I'd be a dominant subtype of ENTP because I'm NE heavy ENTP. But, and then Taylor would be a creative subtype because he's TI heavy ENTP. Second function, heavy. Somebody like, what's his name? Anthony would be a harmonizing subtype because he's his third slot heavy, FE heavy. And in the fourth slot, normalizing, that would be somebody who's got good SI who's an ENTP. I can think of an example. I can't remember the name at the moment. Picking Courtney's boyfriend. Norse god dude. The guy's got long blonde hair, plays the guitar, like shreds on the axe, you know, like it's Yngwie Malmsteen guy. He's, I would say, a normalizing subtype by that description. However, I don't actually think that in general that's one taxonomical framing that you can put around ENTPs or any other type, but I don't think it's very, well, I guess it's informative descriptively a little bit, but it doesn't link very strongly to an intuitive sense that it feels like it's putting a pattern on top of something rather than finding a pattern that's naturally there. Okay, so now let's look at another subtype model. Another subtype model is basically that, or one other major subtype model is basically that you are either your dominant function heavy or your tool function heavy. So you're either an NE subtype of ENTP or a TI subtype of ENTP. You're either an NI subtype of INFJ or an FE subtype of INFJ. And certainly it does seem that you can again put a pattern on top of that. But here's what I think is happening there. Whenever you're talking about an extroverted judging function, you're talking about a function that operates in three capacities. It puts, it gets, it receives. Puts information out there, or does something by its manner of attention. So, for example, if I have TE, to put information may include a little bit of SE in the sense that I'm going to actually screw that thing onto that thing and see if how the world has changed and if I'm in a situation where my idea works better or something. Sorry, I felt a little sick there for a second. Okay. What was I saying? What am I talking about? I'm completely lost my train of thought now. I've completely lost my train of thought. I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. Oh yeah, right. Subtypes. Okay, so whenever you're talking about an extroverted judging function, you're talking about something that puts, gets, and receives. When you talk about, say, a introverted perceiver, that is to say, INFJ, ISFJ, ISTJ, and INTJ, then you're dealing with types that have an extroverted judging function as their tool function. Anybody who's got an extroverted judging function as a tool function is going to potentially use that in ways that prioritize putting, or that prioritize getting, or that prioritize receiving. What does that translate into in terms of actual behavior? Somebody who's got an extroverted judging function as a tool function is going to either talk a lot, actively engage others a lot. They're going to ask a lot of questions, or not a lot in terms of raw quantity, but in terms of ratio to the other two within themselves, or against some sort of norm or mean. Okay. They're going to talk a lot, put information, and if it's FE, it's talk. If it's TE, it might be like move things around or execute some, yeah. But it's easier to talk about FE and than TE, because a lot of times with TE there's an SE step involved. You've got to actually do something. You can't just say something. But of course, with FE, there's an any or SE, and any or SE. For me, it's any form of action too. I actually have to say the words out loud and come up with the ideas and stuff like that. Okay, so with that second tool function, it's such a tangent-filled sentence. I'm still trying to complete one concept here that I've just stuffed with tangents and unnecessary parentheticals, like the one I'm currently fucking engaged in. Put a lot, get a lot means ask more questions. Receive a lot means be quiet. Somebody's really quiet and just waits for you to say something, they're in receive mode. If somebody's asking a question, they're in get mode. If somebody is telling you something that they already know, or that they information, then they're in put mode. With TE, if you have taken a step in the TE'd out order of operations out set of actions you've decided to undertake, you've undertaken. Why decided to? You don't need that, right? You don't need to indicate that you've decided to undertake. You've undertaken it. Just bam. Okay. Fucking Eric. Take the next step in the order of operations you've undertaken. So that would be to put information in TE. It changes the board so that you understand, to be efficient means to know the board, where it was and where it's going, and different ways to get there. So changes where you are on the board and allows you to make further calculations regarding the TE understanding of the situation. In other words, what your goal is, how efficiently to get there, etc. For the getting of information in TE, it is on one level like Googling stuff and or actively determining things about the environment. So, okay, let me measure this. That's getting information. Receiving information is basically the things that you understand epistemologically. Things you understand as knowledge rather than abstractions about which you need to make determinations. So if I measure something, I'm making a determination about abstract status regarding length. And I'm going to use that abstract status regarding length to and relate it to another abstract status or assign something else, like, oh, well, this space is this wide and this thing is this wide, and so that means it doesn't fit there, or it does fit. So that would be the process of getting information. Receiving, and then receiving information is the fact that you know uh, that you just look at a place and you go, well, obviously that suitcase isn't going to fit in here. I can see how big it is. I don't need to measure anything. I don't need to get any information besides but that which I already know just by receiving my sensory input. Okay, so receiving information in TE isn't going to feel, it isn't going to seem like anything. But then, to a second party, uh, receiving information with FE, in other words, being silent, might seem like not much of anything to certain kinds of extroverts who are experiencing and observing it. But we have words for it, like it's listening, or he's using silence. But we don't really have words for that for TE. Okay, so when you have somebody who's got an extroverted judging function as a tool function, for sure, you might get subtypes that go like, oh, he seems more extroverted, or he seems more introverted. Well, that's simply they're prioritizing put or receive. I think that's primarily environmentally determined. What aspect of your tool function, if you're an extroverted judger, uh, gets rewarded will determine your habitual use of it. And as you grow in age, you learn to utilize certain aspects of tool functions more effectively. You learn how to ask questions more efficiently. You learn how to make statements that have more effective at conveying the information you're trying to convey, or are more effective at influencing the other person when you're trying to influence them, or whatever. So you get better at all aspects of your tool function, but that doesn't change the fact that you develop habits of usage and heuristics, tricks of the trade or whatever, that necessarily mean you manifest as prioritizing one of those three aspects of the function. Same is probably true for dominant extroverted feelers, in the sense that their dominant nature will express through one of those three aspects of the function a little bit more than others, but it's not exactly that the aspect of the function is expressing more heavily. It's that the things they're used to doing are examples of that thing. So it doesn't really provide any new information to say there are subtypes. It does seem to provide new information or more clarity about it to say that this is how the function, these are three aspects of the function, and that people get habituated to leaning on certain aspects to use functions, especially if they're tool functions. It is, however, going to express differently if it's your nature than if it's your tool. So your nature, I don't know exactly how that works for extroverted judges. I don't know how they relate to that three-pronged nature, three-pronged aspect of extroverted judging functions as expressed in the dominant slot. I don't quite understand that. I don't understand how they experience it. It's an area where I need to talk to some extroverted judgers and ask them some questions about it, basically. ESFJs, ENFJs, uh, ESTJs, and INTJs. Okay, so that's regarding that, this subtype thing there, is I don't think that it makes sense to say that the reason some given INFJ or ISFJ is more extroverted seeming to the outside world than some others, or than as compared to a given mean or middle standard or whatever, isn't so much because they're a different subtype. It's that they've gotten in the habit of expressing their extroverted judging function through examples of one of those three aspects more than another. So what about somebody like INTP or INFP with a TIFI thing? The other part of Jay's question in the comment was about somebody who scores 51 to 49 or something in the TIFI. Okay. So INTP works, seems to, if you're going to talk about subtypes of INTP, I would point again to ones who seem more extroverted or ones who seem more introverted. Zach, host Zach, old host Zach from long ago, one of the first, almost one of the very earliest people to come start talking to me and express an interest in building a community and stuff like that, helping me to build a community and stuff like that. So he was pretty important in the development of the channel, and he's the one who guided me towards more group conversations and away from one-on-one interviews, which is what I had sort of envisioned doing initially. He had pretty great FE, and he was also clearly an INTP. He was risk avoidant in his FE, but it was when he was talking to you or when he was expressing, when he was extroverting, he was doing it beautifully. His FE was stellar. Now, four-slot FE that expresses that effectively made a lot of people think he was an ENTP. So they'd say, well, it's NE heavy because at least he's extroverting or something. He's taking metaphysical action. He's an NE subtype of an INTP. Or somehow they'll say, well, let's use the other model then. Okay, he's a normalizing subtype of an INTP. Let's call him both. Let's call him a normalizing NE subtype. Okay, well, I think basically he's somebody who expressed his NE by using the get aspects of FE very effectively. Now, the get aspects of FE, asking questions that are relevant to the person you're asking them, and that allow the person you're talking to answer in ways that make the person you're talking to feel smart and informed or whatever. That kind of thing is consistent with INTP and their approach to FE, and it's also consistent with INTP and their approach to data in general. Namely, they seek data and they try to get it, and they try to understand the importance of expressing one's judgment of things as through as disinterested a lens as possible. Sometimes this can lead them astray. For example, Susie is obsessed with the, when I'm typing somebody, what she sees as confirmation bias on my part, that I'm leading them somewhere, looking for examples of this or that. Cherry picking the data, but no, actually, she's cherry picking the data. It's like, we talked to this chick, Rosalind, yesterday, and I was trying to figure out if she was INTP or INFP. I knew she was one because I could see the NE, and she's obviously an introvert. So there you had it. It was down to those basically. And I could see the TI clear as day. I mean, the TI was bright as the sun, and there were a couple of things that suggested FI, and every other thing suggested TI. My questions were designed to falsify TI, not to verify it. The fact that they verified it, it was indisputable based on the data. What I found out after from Susie, which she didn't tell me in the moment, which was the by far the most important fact I could have known, was that Rosalind did competition debate. Competition debate is so much the most effective pedagogy way of teaching that I have successfully turned ENFPs into amazing thinkers. Not me, but simply by putting them in debate and trying to win. All I have to do is try to win. That's the beautiful thing about debate, is it works on the coaches too. I don't have to follow any specific set of protocols or approach or whatever. All I have to do is try to win. The system functions such that if I keep that central purpose in mind, then it liberates me to stop doing anything that doesn't actually contribute to winning, and I don't have to justify the validity of what I'm doing because the process and the results do that for me. Okay. So that's why she shows such good TI. That's why her thinking's so good. There's no other explanation for it that's necessary. And if I had known that, I would have immediately tossed out all the TI data. Because, in fact, you can train people with polar TI to use it very well in the context of rhetorical exchange, which is the only context in which it really ever matters anyway. I mean, it matters a lot if you're like talking about computer programming and science and stuff like that, but who cares about that shit? Not me. I kid. I love it. I think it's important. Thank you, INTPs, for your conscientious parsing out of TI issues. But the fact is, like I'm saying, INTPs, I don't know where I was going with that. And there aren't no subtypes. There ain't no subtypes, and there ain't no bubtypes. Okay? Subtypes are bullshit. Now, my own subtype model is also bullshit. As far as I can tell, I've been thinking about it a lot. But at least mine describes a real dichotomy that is representative of the way that every function expresses in every slot, which is to say, it expresses either in the moment or it has an expression that considers the progression of time, what's already happened, and what one anticipates will happen. So, in other words, it is the case that any in the moment looks like this primarily, coming up with ideas and also including ideas that you've already thought of before. That's SINE, meow, meow, meow. And the shape of the ideation being this sort of intellectual discourse, that's the TI tool function. That's how I'm expressing the any SI ideate and include previous ideas part. Now, across time, then, my NE expresses as the ongoing development of a set of ideas that remain as viscous objects, as to say they're sort of constant and they're sort of evolving and they're not presented yet in a form that could concretely be said to provide a meaningful representation of the set of ideas. The ideas are all collected here into a set of ideas called, talking with Finnish people, but that's not a consumable object in and of itself. And I have several such objects that attempt to conceptually wrap up things and provide a kind of a kind of node within the taxonomy of the world's ideation that comprises the node comprises all talking with famous people and places somewhere within other nodes of concept that are already existent in the world and links and all that shit. Whatever. I'm feeling kind of meh right now. So my basic approach to subtypes was to say, okay, well, it would seem as though people prefer either the real-time aspect of a function or the metaphysical aspect of the function, and which they prefer probably cascades down deductively from which they prefer in the dominant. And I hypothesized this subtype approach because I saw that my mom would appear to be a metaphysical aspect prioritizer of SI. That is to say, she is very much more attentive to what you're going to do next June. Like, she keeps long schedules and careful schedules and makes sure she makes all of her, she's early for everything. And just generally feels a certain amount of frantic need to manage the SI procession of time, namely keeping track of your personal history and your future obligations and stuff like that. Kimberly seems much more prioritizing of the physical aspect of knowing how she feels right now, making sure she feels comfortable, making sure she's not hungry, making sure she's not thirsty, making sure I'm not hungry and thirsty, because SI includes, in some sense, the things you consider part of yourself. That can include people. So SI mothers view their children as part of themselves and treat them as such and keep track of their schedules too and stuff. Kimberly does the same for me, and probably did it for Colin when he was little, but that's a long time ago. Anyway, so it would seem then that would provide maybe a more solid ground to base a claim that says these things are existent. The pattern is not being imposed upon them. The pattern is being inferred from them. But I still don't necessarily think it's right, because according to this model, then the physical aspect of any would be something that I indulge in whenever I do physical invention, like not really inventing things, but I'm gonna attach this thing to that thing and make it into a little table or something. That's what I'm talking about. When that happens, it's physical aspect any, because I'm ideating in a way that is expressing in the physical world right now, and it's sort of combining with TE in that regard. I'm doing little things and then getting information about, oh shit, I shouldn't have put that there, I should have put that over there, because that's any TE party right there. I have that a lot. I try to solve problems around here, Deciding to chop down the tree yesterday was NETE. I stood there, I looked at the tree, and I said to myself, okay, Kim wants this thing gone. Why ought I cut it down, and why ought I not cut it down? And I thought, not cutting it down, I thought, well, because as a general rule, when you don't like to chop down trees at all. You don't like it when other people chop down trees. You believe that we should have as many trees around as possible, which is inconsistent with your perception regarding the sanctity of life as an aspirational good, not necessarily, absolute or determined or anything, but as an aspirational good. And normally, You'd like to let trees grow because the older they are, the better they are. Why do you, yes, cut the tree down? Because, well, here's a good reason. It's growing underneath, it's growing right up against the house. If it gets about 5 feet taller, it'll start pushing up the roof. That's a good reason to chop it down, or at least trim it, but then you'd have to trim it every couple years or something like that. It's just, number two, is planted in an incredibly stupid place. This kind of tree is supposed to be a hedge. You're supposed to plant those things next to each other in a line, and it'll block off like the road if you're next to a busy road or something. They're called Italian pines. They're just these ugly, straight up kind of hedge making pine trees. So it's not supposed to be planted by itself up against the house for no reason. That's number two reason. What's the other reason, Eric? Well, I kind of would like to have a long pole thing. Like, this is a nice straight up and down trunk of a tree. I could cut it down. I can chop off all the little branches coming out of the side, and I'll have a big, big, strong, straight up and down pine pole that tapers. Now, what will I use that for? I have no idea. I know I'm going to have to let it cure for a couple months, at least. So I don't need to worry yet about what I'm going to use it for. I don't have anything in mind, but I like having random materials like that around. I know that. Worst case scenario, I could use it for firewood. So that's NE real time, expressing itself right there, looking at the situation with my eyes and interacting with something that's in the physical world with extroverted intuition, which necessarily is going to involve TE to a certain extent. But once I begin the SE, especially. But you could say that the ideation I did there was TE or TI, TE-ish thing when I noted that, oh, it's in a bad place, it's going to push up the roof. That's anticipating problems in the future is very TE uh, or way to approach the system. And the system here being the physical world and the way that objects interact with each other. In fact, the trees grow up and the roofs don't get out of the way when trees are about to hit them, stuff like that. All right, so in the end, I decided, yes, I'm going to chop down this tree. And I got the axe, and that's when a little bit of the real-time TE kicks in, where it says, all right, you've seen the cartoons. You've never chopped down a tree before with an axe, or with anything else, but you've seen the cartoons. You got to chop it like this, like a yeah, right? So I did that. I went, and then I went up a little bit. And it was harder than I thought because you're trying to get it near the bottom, and then that sort of constrains your angles from the bottom. Anyway, but it wasn't that thick of a round of the trunk, and I was able to chop it down in fairly short order. I did that, and it still wouldn't. It was like, well, it wasn't falling over at all. So I did a little bit on the other side. 'Cause I remember also from cartoons, I've seen that, so that you have it like two wedges on a wedge on each side, and then there's a thing in the middle, and then you push it and it falls over. So I did that, and then I did get up. I was like, well, let me try it now, and I pushed it, and it went easy, just timber, So the TE there was based on SI. It said, I remember from cartoons what that looks like. I'm going to try to make it look like that. And the SE is how successfully did I make it look like that in terms of how cleanly did I chop at the spots I wanted to chop at, and how little energy did I use to accomplish the task. A good SE person will show good TE in their physical execution of labor. They'll swing the axe as few times as possible and with as little extraneous motion as possible. Preserve energy. Be efficient, So, subtypes. If we're talking about real time or cross time, in other words, physical or metaphysical aspects to each function, then the problem with that idea is extroverted intuition is metaphysical action. It is first and foremost, it's it's objective. Even if you're dealing with feelings, to ideate about them, to come up with possibilities about how you might feel, is to deal with your feelings as though they were objects, as though they were things that had definitions that you could work with through language. And obviously, if you're NETI, it means you're double metaphysical. So your metaphysical action is your nature, then the metaphysical internal justification evaluation metric is also metaphysical. So what that means is, when I say that I'm prioritizing one aspect, there is a physical aspect to NE in the sense of what I just described with the tree this morning. And then there is a more metaphysical aspect to NE in the sense that right now I'm chopping down an abstract tree. But it's still in the moment, and to the extent that it applies across time, it's via SI. So it's part of the NISI loop, part of the NISI axis, I mean. And the way that NE and SI axis, fucking Eric, is part of that. It's part of the way that NE works. To generate possibilities necessitates that you keep track of possibilities you've already generated. You keep track of possibilities that are already existent and presented as possibilities. You keep track of what you already know, what you've learned, what you've decided already, and that's how you relate each of the new things. It doesn't relate. That's the field on which possibility generation must play. In other words, to determine something that, hey, I'm coming up with a possibility, I'm coming up with something new, necessarily requires you to keep track of what's not any longer new, because you already know that thing, or already said that thing. In practice, when I'm talking this shit out on video, I'm using a combination of I'm doing that thing. I've got a topic forms one point of reference, in this case subtypes. The SI, what I already know about subtypes, what I'm planning to say about them, what I've said before, what the other people say about it, like what the existing models are, DCHN or 1-2 subtypes, like are your dominant subtype or your tool subtype. I know that stuff already. I presented that already in this video. I'm now remembering that I presented it already in this video, and I'm referencing it again in order to make clear the relevance of this new thing I'm saying to the concept of possibility generation. Namely, that newness requires keeping track of oldness in order to know what's new. In the same sense that acting at the right moment requires keeping track, requires being still, requires knowing how to be still, knowing how to not act in the moment. So SE and NI work like that. Hi, INFJ Tom. I'm currently at the end of quite a long, expansive video on a comment from one J Poopface Stewart, they call him. Old Poopface. Anyway, J Poopface Stewart left us a comment here, and he says his middle name is probably not actually Poopface. I just want to clarify that. He says, Eric, can you do a video on socionics INFJ? I see what you're saying. Socionics INFJ, INFP NE subtype. Sorry. Anyway, the point is there's very little information out there. Are subtypes real? Perhaps a video on INFP who scored 55% F5 versus TF. Alright, so what I would say about, so he's talking about INFP with a little j, and I didn't make the translation. It doesn't matter, because everything I've said so far is still absolutely relevant to what's going on in general. But the INFP, being an NE subtype or a FI subtype is I don't think it works like that. Is my whole point of this video. I think instead what you see is with the tool function of any. Oh, I haven't actually gone over that yet. I need to go over that now. With a tool function of a perceiving tool function, extroverted perceiving tool function, such as extroverted sensing or extroverted intuition. If you have that, then unlike having an extroverted judging function in your tool slot, extroverted perceiving function in your tool slot doesn't have those three aspects at all, but it does express as from a conceptual perspective as either more or less impulsiveness. SE in the moment is impulsive. SE across time follows through on shit. Any in the moment is untethered. Any across time is powerful in how it links to that which is already presumed true by others, if you're a TI, or that which is already experienced as emotionally significant. I don't know how it works with FI. Fucking FI just confuses me. But that's not the point. The point is, no, subtypes aren't real. I don't like subtypes. I think it's stupid. Even my own subtype model doesn't work. It only works for some things in some contexts, and they're all just seem to be patterns imposed upon a uh, natural spread within a type. The thing is that uh, cognitive function stack that you have, the way that the functions relate to each other. If you're an INFP and you've got 55% FI, 45% TI, well, like I said about Rosalind, yeah, Rosalind is somebody who did competition debate. Her TI is highly developed, and she would score well on any TI assessment, including the one that I was giving her casually when I was trying to type her. Susie was all up in arms that I would dare consider the possibility to be an INTP, even though all the data suggested it in the moment. So, what I've tried to say about this before is I'm not the one cherry picking for confirmation bias. She is. Regardless, yeah, I mean, the woman that she was highly intelligent, and I was pretty sure that she was an INTP even after Susie sort of convinced me to go back to INFP for a bit at the end. But I mean, I was pretty after the conversation ended and I got off. I was like, no, she is INTP. What the fuck is Susie talking about? But then Susie finally informed me. Well, she did competition debate. That changes everything. So 55% to 45%, those percentages don't mean anything. If you are an FI DOM, you have 8 slot TI. If you are an NE DOM like me, you have 8 slot TE. 8 slot SE. We both, INFPs, to the extent that they think themselves not effective at TI, is because they're insecure about it, and they're much better than they think. Just as ENTPs, to the extent that they feel as though they're weak at SE, it's because they're insecure about it, and they are much better than they think. That's the truth.
So development of the function isn't the same as preference?
Isn't the same as what?
As preference.
Oh, preference, right. Yeah, I don't use that word preference at all. I don't think people prefer functions. I think people habitually express themselves through a given attentional variant. So that is to say, I could be paying attention right now to the fact that I have to poop. I do have to poop, and I'm aware of it slightly, but it keeps going out of my awareness because I'm focused instead on ideational possibilities, what you asked, and where I can go with that, stuff like that. Go ahead.
So it's more like a conscious handle. It's like you can use it more whenever you can or whenever you want.
Well, there are some manners of attention that are compelled upon you. If you break your hand, you are compelled to attend to SI. Your body is saying, I hurt. You cannot ignore my discomfort and what I'm seeking from you, which is attention. If you're an ENTP, it's very easy for you to ignore things like being hungry, being thirsty, having to poop, if you're having fun. This was true for me from childhood on. I used to get constipated because I'd refuse to come in from playing to go poo. That's
Right. This
bad
is this is
SI.
based on, this is based on your want, yeah, like you wants, like you do not want to make to pay any attention to that function, or your ability, like you do not have the ability to pay attention, or like
Well,
I mean,
put
preference is more want than the ability.
it's it's more like this. Because it's my nature to focus on possibilities in an extroverted fashion and to aspirationally relate that to being liked by others. What it means to say that is it means that time after time when I'm a little kid and going forward from there, I express my existence by doing NETI stuff, and that in doing so, there's a logical exclusion of the possibility that I also do certain other kinds of attention, and there's a relationship between some attentions and others that's like I can do it in ways that are consistent with the manner of attention or inconsistent. Like, for example, FE. It's possible for me to indulge in introverted thinking style intuiting, like I'm doing right now, in ways that are more consistent with FE, in other words, that reward me on another level or that fail to reward me on that level. If I'm expressing these ideas in ways that make you like me more, then I'm utilizing successfully, concurrently, introverted thinking and extroverted feeling as a way of expressing my extroverted intuition. And my extroverted intuition always expresses as part of the extroverted intuition introverted sensing axis, which means it refers back to things I already defined as known and old so that I can successfully generate newness, which is, of course, the purpose of extroverted intuition is newness. In order to express newness as a fundamental nature, what that means is that I am consistently, most of the time, attending to matters of newness, oldness, and logical consistency, and keeping track of presenting that shit in ways that make people like me. Whether it's because I prefer that or want that isn't actually a meaningful question. I am that because I have been that consistently over time. And thus, to the extent that I have free will choice now to choose to attend in that fashion or to choose to attend in some other fashion, I only have that free will or choice insofar as I'm aware of the alternatives to my habitual
Right.
manners of attention. So that's as a consequence of metacognition. Now we have a choice to prioritize other manners of attention. It's not to say that we prefer some or the other. It's not to say that we want to express as some or the other. It's to say that we habitually did before we were able to think about it and do still now that we are able to think about it.
So it's like a default state of identity in which you came, uh, like you get familiar with the system of yourself that is some giving you some kind of reward, like,
Right.
from being like, I always do this. I'm a me. So I'm, for example, and I don't. This is me, and I get the reward from that.
Right. And the world trains us to uh, to execute in ways expecting certain outcomes. So for example, if I grow up in a household that rewards silence a lot and punishes expression a lot, then I'll probably express my extrovert intuition in ways that are less visible.
But do you think this is connected then to the environment or to genetics? Your type.
Well, here's the thing about that. I don't have a clear position on it. I don't really know. I do know this, that I believe I can start distinguishing, primary manner of attention, or at least eliminating certain possibilities of primary manner of attention as early as a month old. I've got a newborn baby next door that I've been watching carefully.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Delilah as a newborn baby as well. In retrospect, it seems obvious to me that she was expressing early on either extroverted sensing or extroverted intuition. She was very much always trying to get at something, either get something physically, she was always frustrated by the inability to express action when she was really little. And I've seen plenty of other babies that are much more calm. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know why people are a certain type. It would seem to me simply that you can't exist except as manifesting a manner of attention. And you can't manifest a manner of attention without necessarily not manifesting manners of attention that are exclusive to the one that you're manifesting, and without also concurrently manifesting other manners of attention that are necessarily linked to the one you're expressing. So it would seem to me you'd have to be born with either with a 1-4. You have to be born with a 1-4. You can't be existent ontologically without a manner of attention. That's what it means to be, is to attend.
Mm-hmm. But someone might argue that why then couldn't you shift your attention and just you can recognize others ways of thinking, and then if the type wasn't so like hardwired, if it was just that I have decided to
You
follow
can.
this.
You can
You
shift your
can.
manner of attention. I certainly can. Um, and I do sometimes. But the point is, I could also shift instruments. I play the guitar pretty well. I play the piano pretty poorly, and I play the drums pretty poorly, and I play the like I don't know I play harmonica pretty good. I could shift and start playing xylophone. I would not be completely incompetent at it because I understand what a xylophone is now. As a musician, I've studied enough music that I get the concept of xylophone. If you put me in front of one, it wouldn't be like putting a non-musician in front of one. I'd be able to make some pleasant sounding melodies and stuff with it. But at the same time, I haven't practiced it at all.
Right. Right. So, so you tend to do more things you've always done, or you get experience it.
Well, I mean, put it this way. Let's say you live 10 years. You've got then 120 months you're talking about. In those 120 months, maybe you've got, I don't know how many hours that is, okay, per day, or how many days that is. 120 months is 30 times 120 is 3 times 120 would be 360, so it's 3,600. 3,600 uh, 3,600 days. Okay, in those 3,600 days, you've got, let's say, uh, 16 hours per day. So 3,600 times 10 is 36,000. And then 3,600 times 6 is, say, 20,000. So it's like 60,000, okay? 60,000 hours. In those 60,000 hours, you will, by default, if you're not thinking about it, not actively considering your own attentional qualities, then you will be expressing a default no matter what. Whether it's because you were born with it or whatever, you will be expressing something. You can't exist without attending. So those hours will be spent doing that thing. The hours that the hours I spend ideating, what does that mean? It means most of the time I'm driving around in the car, I'm not going, oh, I love so much and I feel so strongly. I'm not attending in that fashion. I'm going, but if truth really did work like that, then wouldn't there be an objective? Blah, 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 blah. I'm doing that shit in my head all the time. I'm philosophizing or whatever. That's expressing my. It means I'm existent by by attending to that. That's if I were a Zen monk, I'd be prioritizing NI, the NI state of relationship with SE in the moment. In other words, I'm going to be empty and I'm going to be free of the monkey mind. I'm going to be a still soul, and I'll be waiting. And so, such that if I were hunting, I would wait until the prey was, and I'd be so still and perfectly one with the world that the prey would not see me as anything but an object in the world and will walk right in front of me. And then, with a swiftness and certainty that is absolutely perfect, I would pull out my samurai sword and chop the deer's head off, and then it would fall to the side. Somehow I would have sliced the belly and removed all the entrails all in one swipe, and it would fall ready to be filleted.
Right, right. But I have like a one. I agree, but I have one little problem with it. That where is like everything, every action has a reaction, and this is a reaction. Like person can, for example, go to school, and then when he's young, and he learns that he can do sports, he can go attend a chess club, he can like get when he get himself with some types of people or another group and so on. And he makes those decisions, and I believe that it is not entirely coincidence. There is a preference because you have options and you choose to do some of them. So if that was like, all right, he already had some hours of his life spent on some, for example, extroverted intuition, then he may choose that preference more likely. Right, but there's always the question: why did he have more hours spent on it? Like, what did it cost? And couldn't that be like a preference, or like he is more something in his brain it is causing him to, for example, not burn out easily when he uses this function. Like so for example, some people cannot pay attention so long
Yeah,
as the users can.
I get your point. Let me do my best to answer that. First of all, it there are Dario Nardi's brain scan studies that show that appear to show the functions that you can that the brain lights up differently uh, according to which function is being expressed. So there is a correlation to a physical component in that capacity. Extroverted intuition is what Nardi refers to. Nardi refers to as Christmas tree brain, that it lights up kind of like all over the place, right? And not, but not steady. And that, well, you can see the scans. I don't remember what they all look like, but they have a distinct sort of signature pattern that that reflects the state of attention that is represented by a cognitive function.
Right.
So there is that. Now, if you're asking, well, but why are you that and not the other? Is it because you prefer it? Is it because like you said, is it Is it that it requires less energy for you for some reason to use that, or what? The answer is I don't know.
But isn't it all connected? Isn't it also the preference, want, identity, used to do? Like, isn't
Values.
these things the thing of the same coin? Like,
Well,
sides of the same coin?
look, the certain manners of attention are going to correlate more strongly with some values and less strongly with others. So when you talk about preference, really you're talking about values. What do you habitually value? For example, if we're having a conversation and you're telling me that I shouldn't explain why you're wrong because it's making you feel bad, you prefer to feel like you're right. To me, I'm going to countervalue that. I'm going to say, that's bullshit. We shouldn't do that. That's not fair. In other words, I'm going to express the values of TI. And the reason I'm going to express the values of TI is because I am habitually, I'm habituated to attending to the world via a TI manner of attention. So obviously, I've gotten quote unquote good at it, which means I can interact with the world efficiently as long as the world's TIing back at me.
Yes, and it would be your like the point. This interaction would be your preferred because you are best at it, and you would prefer if the game was that everybody has to use it.
Right.
You don't want, no.
Yes, that's
So it
true.
means
That's true. But I would say
collectively.
I value. I'd say I value it rather than prefer it. Because to say I prefer it means that it suggests that I'm actively choosing it. And I don't think I really am. I do
Yes,
value it. To the extent that I have active choice, it's when I choose not to value it.
right, right. Yes, I agree with that. But I mean, like if somebody who is extremely physical, like he certainly would prefer a world where physical skill gets you on top.
Sure.
And he would like to create such an environment or attend it.
Sure. I mean,
He would like to.
he values circumstances that do that more than he
Correct.
values circumstances that reward things he's bad at, for sure. And in fact, that's why you have an insecurity function. Like, um, I com- competitively compared against other people, I win when we're playing NETI, and I lose when we're playing
Yeah.
SENI. You know, when I was a kid, I was like the last one picked on the team in PE. However, the reality is, I got pretty good at SE. So that by the time I was older, especially out of high school, I played a lot of pickup basketball. I even went down to, I started playing regularly at the black court because I was I was pretty good. You know, I'm tall. I'm 6'4", and I didn't look good. I looked slow and clumsy, but I was effective ultimately at SE stuff. And and to the extent that I was ineffective, it had a lot to do with the to the extent that I'm ineffective with SE, it has to do with the fact that I'm insecure about my SE more than it does that I actually am ineffective about SE. And the insecurity can sometimes make me actually ineffective about SE. So it's a weird relationship I have with extroverted sensing. But you're right, absolutely. I prefer environments that reward the shit that I'm good at rather than reward the shit that I'm bad at because I'm going to get rewards in the former thing and I'm not going to get them in the latter thing. And I also experienced a lot of personal life experience that relates to the extent that I was subject to injustice, it linked to that. You know, I always felt like I was being judged on how well I played sports, which was the only thing that mattered when I was growing up for boys. It was like the social structure was about, well, they're the boys who are good at sports, they're the good people, and they're the boys who are bad at sports. Those little fucking pussies need to shut their fucking mouths.
Yeah, and the thing is that even if you get good at it, I don't know about you, but I personally still feel like there is some kind of secret. These
Right.
people doesn't they
Absolutely.
don't know they don't know that I suck at it at my like core, but I appear to be good at it. Like, and it's not you don't feel like home, like at home.
Right. That they're in a secret club, and that even when you're doing exactly the same thing as they are, that they know shit that you don't know, and they're keeping it from you. And
It's, it,
yeah, I
it
don't
comes
like
on
that at all.
natural. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna end this video. We've been recording this whole time. Thanks, INFJ Tom, for participating and asking some good questions. I don't think I've ever actually talked to you before. I just seen your cancer lady picture. So for friends out there in the world, this is an hour and 10-minute long recorded video. It's not a live stream, and I'm gonna
Oh,
upload this thing because Jay Stewart, you have provoked in me a lot of thinking about subtypes this morning. And if anybody made it all the way through the end of this video, you get 5 extra points plus the status of today's excitement person. Okay? You can claim that status all day long. Hey, did you hear? I'm today's excitement person. Bye.